Welcome, everyone, to the Friday, July 18th, 2025 episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the podcast, more on the deportation of an Eastern Iowa man, what happened at the Family Leaders Annual event, and another batch of new congressional candidates. Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. We have a couple of belated birthdays to celebrate today, including Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief Tom Barton, who I neglected to mention on last week's podcast. So making up for that here today. Happy belated birthday, Tom, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Erin.
Celebrated it on the golf course, I heard, yeah?
I did, yeah.
And not playing, for anybody who's wondering. Maybe Tom's a really good golfer too, but checked out the John Deere Classic.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought I saw you out there at the TPC Deer Run. That wasn't you?
Caught him on TV.
Where were you? Were you out there on Sunday?
No, I wasn't.
All right, lead Des Moines Bureau Chief Maya Marchel Hoff is with us. Hello, Maya.
Hello, Erin.
We have Sarah Watson of the Quad City Times here. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. And were you actually out at the John Deere Classic?
He was.
Indeed,
Okay,
I was.
all right.
Yeah.
Golfing with the pros?
No, hanging out in the cool pavilion, sipping and watching the pros do amazing things that I can only dream of.
Nice.
Also celebrating a recent birthday is Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal. Happy, and welcome, Jared.
Hello. I'm 1 year away of completely aging out of the all-important 18 to 35 demographic, so very exciting.
So when all those needles move next year, we'll know why on all the big surveys.
That's right. No more Nielsen money coming to the McNett household.
Gazette columnist Althea Cole's with us. Hello, Althea.
Hello, and I very much miss being 35 years old.
And also, I think he was just 35 years old within the last year or two. Gazette columnist Todd Dorman.
Yeah, I was 35 19 years ago. So I don't have birthdays anymore. There's no point. Just, you're 50 something. Who cares?
5 something or ever.
Yeah.
50. All right. Let's get started this week with Sarah, who couldn't make last week's podcast because she was covering a rally in the Quad Cities regarding the deportation of an Eastern Iowa man. Sarah, I'll just let you jump right in and tell us what you saw.
Yeah, so some supporters of Pascual Pedro met with staffers from Iowa's congressional delegation last week in Davenport. A couple of our U.S. senators and then U.S. Representative Marionette Miller Meeks have offices in Davenport in the same building. And so they met with some staffers to advocate for congressional intervention to return 20-year-old Pascual Pedro, who lived in West Liberty, to the U.S. So Pedro was detained during a routine immigration and customs enforcement check-in and was deported less than a week later. So that's according to the nonprofit who has been organizing a lot of these demonstrations in support of Pedro. That nonprofit is Escucha Mi Voz. A couple hundred people came to Davenport and demonstrated outside of the buildings in support of Pedro. Some of them came on buses from the West Liberty area or from the Iowa City area. So a little bit of background, Pedro came to the U.S. when he was 13. He played soccer for the West Liberty High School, graduated, worked construction, lived with his grandparents. Pedro had no criminal record. He was confirmed through his Catholic church. And Escucha Mi Voz and people who knew Pedro say that this was just all very sudden, that they say he was not afforded due process, that he didn't have a hearing or a chance to appeal. And his confirmation sponsor, who's a priest at the Catholic church he attended, Guillermo Trevino, said in his 10 years, he's written character support letter, essentially like support letters for members of his church. And he's never seen a deportation as quick as this. Usually it takes months. They were really asking for some kind of congressional intervention, such as they gave an example. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise in Louisiana intervened in a case of a detained Iranian woman who had lived in the U.S. U.S. for more than 40 years after some public pushback. So, their position was, if the members of Iowa's congressional delegation really put their minds to it, they could intervene in this case as well. So that was a little bit about what happened. It seemed like the report back from meeting with staffers was essentially that, they delivered the message, but that they wanted to set up further meetings with the actual members of the congressional delegation on this issue. And now I think there is also another person that Escucha Mi Voz is advocating for, who's currently detained. So, I think this will be an ongoing issue.
Yeah, and to that, Sarah, I was going to follow up. Has there been any indication from the Congress folks' office, or like how likely? I mean, there's only so much they can do. First of all, that's obviously largely out of their hands. I suppose they could advocate to the administration. Have we gotten any sense of how likely any of that is?
Yeah, I don't think it's very likely. I think somebody else had a story about the responses from Iowa's delegation. Was that you, Tom? I can't remember.
I just asked Ashley Hinton about it during a press call, and I think her response was largely, I think, the response that we're going to hear from Althea, who wrote a column about it, saying that lack of a criminal record does not prevent you from being deported if you're here in the country without sufficient legal status and if you're eligible for deportation. And so her argument was that, to her knowledge, and I don't know if they spoke to this at the protest, but to her knowledge, there was a final deportation order for Pascual Pedro that was handed down, I think, shortly after he crossed in the country illegally with his father, and had been essentially granted conditional stay or conditional permission to remain in the country under supervision with his grandparents. But again, because there was that final deportation order issued, the argument from Congresswoman Ashley Hinton was that as far as she knows and as far as she concerned, he was given due process. And, while it may be unfortunate, it's not illegal, and said that he and anybody else who may be subject to deportation orders should take advantage of pathways that are available through Customs and Border Enforcement to self-deport and then apply for trying to get legal status to enter the country again. She talked about the CPB-1 app that was rebranded by the Trump administration that the Biden administration had been using to try and kind of mitigate the chaos and influx of illegal border crossings by having people go and use the app to schedule appointments. Now it's being rebranded for people to self-deport.
Yeah, Tom mentioned it, Althea. You wrote about this week, and I wanted to ask you as well. So in your column, you said Pedro's deportation is heartbreaking, but also neither illegal nor wrong. Tell us a little bit more about what you wrote, Althea.
It is terribly sad. Absolutely. There's no question about that. However, it is not illegal. So as Tom was saying, he was marked for expedited removal shortly after crossing the border with his father in 2018. So it's been about 7 years that Pascual Pedro has been here. He was released under an order of supervision. So his father was sent home pretty much immediately. Expedited removal, it was passed in 1996 in a fairly bipartisan bill. So the process of expedited removal, which allows ICE agents or low-level immigrations officials to enact a deportation quickly without going through the immigration court, that's been a law for almost 30 years now. And that was the process by which Pascual Pedro was determined to be removed from the country immediately. Now, unlike his father, he was sent to live with his grandparents under what's called an order of supervision. So Pascual Pedro's situation is not a criminal situation, but I'm gonna wade into some dangerous territory, and I'm going to compare it to a criminal situation just for context here. If somebody had gone to criminal court and been found guilty of a crime, this would essentially be the part where they are released home or to supervision until they are asked to report for their sentence. So it's been since 2018 that he has been allowed to live with his grandparents under the understanding that at any point, the next change, the expected next step, I should say, in his immigration process would be that he is sent home to Guatemala. Now it becomes much harder to do and much more difficult given that he has been here for 7 years. And, to everybody else's point, he did everything else correctly. He went to school. He was not known to police, no criminal trouble whatsoever. That's what makes it heartbreaking that he started a life here like a lot of other people. Unfortunately, his situation is one. He is one person. There is still the overall situation of illegal immigration and all of the people who are living in this country without authorization. And it becomes a choice of, do you enforce the law or do you not? Politically speaking, the manner in which the law is being enforced has given some people pause. But the overall problem of illegal migration is not something on which the American public has totally softened. It was a huge issue in the 2024 election, and that just hasn't evaporated over the last 6 months or so, or since when Donald Trump was elected. As I wrote in my column, we don't enforce the law because of the Pascual Pedros of the world. We enforce the law because of those who came into the country illegally and did choose to do something that caused a problem to public safety, that caused a problem to the sovereignty of the United States. We've experienced that in the state of Iowa a couple of times. One thing I did not mention in my column was that recently in Johnson County, a man was arrested who has an ICE detainer. I believe his name, Jesus Mejia Gomez. He was arrested for using somebody else's social security number to, I believe, apply for a loan or, register a vehicle, also register a mobile home. So those are relatively low-level crimes in the state of Iowa. They're aggravated misdemeanors. In the event that, he is tried, even if he is found guilty and sentenced and carries out that sentence, the question is what happens to him after that sentence is carried out? He will be removed from the country, in part because he had an ICE detainer. It is because of people like him, assuming he did, do what he is accused of and is found guilty of having done so. It's because of people like that we enforce these laws. To the point that Sarah made earlier about the Iranian woman who has been living in Louisiana for almost a half century, that is an excellent argument for why you don't enforce the law with an iron fist in all circumstances, and there should be discretion available. So why would that not be permitted for somebody like Pascual Pedro? In the circumstance of the woman from living in Louisiana, she came from Iran half a century ago, where the political climate back then was absolutely terrible. Her family supported the recently deposed Shah, or recently deposed at the time, and her family would continue to face, given the continued tensions between the U.S. and Iran, to say the least, she would face significant dangers to her life and personal safety. That's not to say that the nation of Guatemala, where Pedro is from, is totally without its problems with violence and other things, but we don't have the same understanding that he would face the same level or seriousness of violence that the woman living in Louisiana would have. So unfortunately, it's not as cut and dry. It is still terribly heartbreaking, and people can definitely make the case that it is immoral. What's legal is not always moral. What's moral is not always legal. The two don't jive perfectly. But the bottom line is this was inevitable. It was just delayed for a very, very long time, but it should not have been unexpected. If there are any legal avenues available to bring Pascual Pedro back, I think all of us really, really hope that those avenues are pursued and that they are successful. But like I said, unfortunately, this was inevitable. Its rapidness definitely came as a surprise, but it was bound to happen at some point if the law was to be enforced at all. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people Republicans, Democrats alike, they absolutely agree that we need reform to the system so that people like Pedro Pascal can come to the United States and does have a pathway to live here legally, even if it's not through citizenship. The fear of being deported is enough that we should want a change to the law. Are Democrats willing to come to the table and sit down with Republicans who are in power right now, along with the Republican president who made immigration a central issue on his 2024 platform? Are they willing to sit down and come to the table for a compromise that says, if somebody who hasn't committed crimes but still came here legally, no, we should not prioritize these individuals for deportation. Unfortunately, while Pascal Pedro's supporters have done the right thing, they haven't gotten violent with immigration officials. That's not the case in other places like Texas or in California, where we're seeing quite a bit of violence. And we're also seeing local political leaders there say, essentially, no deportations at all. That's not going to work either, unfortunately, in this debate. And so that's one of the problems that we're really having right now as far as figuring out, where do we go from here? Unfortunately, people like Pascal Pedro are caught in the middle of it. And that's part of what makes this so terribly tragic.
Yeah, and to that, and I don't want to spend, we got so much more to get to, but real quick, and you touched on this a little bit, Althea, but let me ask you to that point about, you mentioned how rapid it happened. I wanted to put to you, because I know I can hear from the folks who would be critical of this kind of stuff, that what I'm sure they would say is that we heard all throughout the election that we're going to focus on the criminals first and get them out, and that wasn't, while the legal reasons were very established as we've laid out here, the fact that one like this was prioritized, despite being someone that by all accounts was a good US and Iowa citizen. Is that a fair criticism in your view, or not?
It's a fair criticism, Pasquale, not even close to the worst of the worst, the very opposite of the worst of the worst. That being said, of all of the people who are not in the United States right now without legal authorization, and I'm gonna give the estimate of about 11 million. DHS has essentially set a goal of removing, I think last count it was 2,000. They may have upped that to 3,000, removing 3,000 people per day who are not authorized to be living in the United States right now. The harder that Democrats make that, the more likely ICE is going to be to go after the low-hanging fruit in order to not specifically meet those goals, but in order to enact the intent of what they're here to do, which is to start removing people from this country who should not be here illegally. Yes, we should absolutely start with the worst of the worst, but the harder it is to do that, the more people like Pedro Pascal are going to be caught up in that, and they're going to have to pay pretty dearly for it.
I had two questions, hopefully quick questions, one for Althea and one for Sarah. The question I had for Althea was, Sarah's reporting and mentioned that he got detained while he was doing like a routine check-in with ICE, and I wonder if you would worry that when other people who are trying to do those check-ins and things like that see a case like this and then just decide, to hell with doing that, like that guy was checking in and he got deported anyway, so why should I even try to be making my presence known in such a way? Do you worry about stuff like this having kind of a deleterious effect?
Absolutely. There's no question about it, which again, from my perspective, it comes back to the enforcement issue of what is being done to get in the way of actually going after the worst of the worst. Hopefully we don't have a lot of that in Iowa. And I can't stress enough, Pascal Pedro's supporters have not been doing what has been taking place in California and Texas, as far as attacking ICE agents by, throwing rocks at the vehicle, interfering just in the most simple of terms with detainment and arrest themselves. Yeah, that's all going to have a deleterious effect, unfortunately.
And then, Sarah, do you know where he was deported to? Was it just back to Guatemala? Or, I mean, I know there have been cases where people aren't getting deported back to their home countries even, so.
Yeah, it was to Guatemala.
Okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like they have been in contact with him
Right.
back there. So
And I don't have any information to suggest that he's been detained in Guatemala. So as far as we're aware, even though he is in Guatemala, he essentially has the full citizenship rights of going anywhere and doing anything. So he's not detained.
All right. Moving on. Another news item that came from late last week: the Christian Conservative Family Leader Group on Friday held its annual Leadership Summit, an event which included Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders as a speaker. For those, I think most of y'all listening to this podcast know what the Family Leader Group is, but for those who may not, again, it's a very influential Christian conservative group that gets involved in supporting political candidates, especially during the presidential precinct caucus cycles here in Iowa, and it's headed by Bob Vanderplatz, who has been a candidate for governor in Iowa in the past. Maya covered the event for our team. Maya, what were some of the noteworthy things you heard Friday here in downtown Des Moines?
Yeah, it was a day full of speakers from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So there was definitely a lot said and talked about. One thing that stuck out to me was just the conversation around the upcoming elections in 2026 and 2028. That was kind of a common thread across a lot of speakers, especially in the afternoon. During his remarks, which he talked a couple of times, Vanderplatz referred to next year's midterm election as a chance to end the onslaught of abortion in this country, including in Iowa's gubernatorial race. And also Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, President Marjorie Dannenfeld. She was also a speaker. She noted how Iowa will play a role in selecting the next Republican presidential candidate in 2028. Both of them kind of hit on the point of how what they want to see in a candidate is someone that is very staunchly pro-life, that nails down on that pretty hard. And that doesn't, include a lot of exceptions. I know that, Republicans can range in what types of abortion policies they stand behind, but, they were really looking for people that would get behind pretty strict bans on abortion. And I thought that was really interesting. Another thing that kind of came up is where the pro-life movement goes, in, post overturning of Roe v. Wade. And this was kind of a similar conversation I also heard back or earlier this month at the March for Life that happened at the Iowa Capitol. I think the next thing that folks in the pro-life community are going to want to target is the availability of the abortion pill or mifepristone. That is kind of especially in states that have enacted stricter abortion bans, especially post Roe v. Wade overturning. The rate of medication abortions across the country has increased, making up 63% of all abortions in 2023 compared to 53% in 2020, according to the Guttmacher Institute. That it's a nonprofit that supports abortion rights. So I just kind of thought that was really interesting to see kind of where folks are going next in terms of, Republicans are in broad control right now. The pro-life community saw a lot of victories in 2023 and 2024 in terms of either defeating ballot initiatives that would, in multiple states, that would aim to expand abortion access or enshrine the right to abortion in state constitutions and stuff like that. So it was interesting to see the conversation around that. As you mentioned, Erin, Sarah Huckabee Sanders also talked. I think she was the unofficial keynote speaker. She went at the end of the afternoon, but she talked a lot about just her experience in all of her roles across her political career. She's the first female governor of Arkansas. I think she's currently the youngest governor in office across the country. She was also formerly the White House press secretary and Trump's first term in office. So she just talked about her experience in office during that time. She also shared her connections to Iowa. She said that she met her husband here in 2008 when she was helping out with her father's campaign. here in Iowa. Her father, Mike Huckabee, who is currently the U.S. ambassador to Israel, and he won the Republican caucuses that year in Iowa. So she said, Iowa will always hold a very special place in my heart. She talked a little bit about that. And then talking about another speaker, Governor Kim Reynolds spoke for quite a while. She got a little bit teary during her remarks during the beginning and the end, talking about her decision not to run, and the conversation she's had with her family around that. And making that decision, she said that it was a really hard decision for Kevin, who is her husband, and I to make. It's been an honor of a lifetime to serve this state as your governor, and so we didn't approach it lightly. But she mentioned that she's missing her family. They're getting older, and her parents are getting older, so she wants to be there in the way that they had been there for her. But she, said she hopes to continue to see her legacy, or the things that she has done while she's in office, and kind of being able to pass that torch into future administrations and the Iowa governor's office. She also highlighted some of the key policy victories on her end this legislative session, including the removal of gender identity from the Iowa Civil Rights Act that went into effect on July 1st, which LGBTQ advocates in Iowa argue will make transgender and non-binary Iowans vulnerable to discrimination in a couple areas, including housing, healthcare, education, and public accommodations. Vanderplaats also, he came on right after her. He also kind of followed up with her and got a little bit teary as well. And then he kind of prompted the crowd, who do they want to see fill her role next? So those are just some of the highlights. Obviously, there were a lot of other things that were talked about, but those are kind of some of the common threads I saw.
Thanks, Maya. I wanted to go back to Sarah Huckabee Sanders really quick, because for those of us who have been doing this a while, is you listen to Maya's description there, you heard about at least a few steps toward a presidential run. The person was in Iowa. The person talked about their connections to Iowa. That's two of the biggest ones on the running for president bingo card. As I understand, Maya, Sarah Huckabee Sanders did not talk to reporters, did not gaggle at that event, so she didn't get asked the question directly, correct?
No, she didn't. But to kind of add to that, based off of reporting from the Des Moines Register, Vanderplaats was talking at a West Side Conservatives meeting
By the way,
earlier.
hold on. I'm going to stop you there because we cannot cite the Register here. I was at this event. I know what you're talking about. So stuff it, Brienne Fonacio. By the way, so hold on. Now I need to clarify for those who don't know me and Brienne. I think the world of Brienne. We have a wonderful working relationship as competitors and as friends away from our jobs. So that is all in good spirit here. But I am still proud. And so if we don't have to cite the Register, I don't want to. You're going to say that Bob Vanderplaats at the West Side Conservative Club said that he did not think Sarah Huckabee Sanders came here to run for president, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. But then, like I said, she also ticked off a lot of those boxes. So we'll see. It's early.
Erin, you know that that Iowa is sort of the Arkansas of the North.
Don't you dare. Jared McNett. Bailey, how do I mute a person completely? All right. Moving on. Perfect time to move on. Bailey says only they hold that power. That's probably a good thing. Let's move on now to our latest round of candidate updates. In this past week, we've got a couple on the Democratic side in Eastern Iowa's 2nd Congressional District, where Republican Ashley Hinson is the incumbent. We had one candidate announce her entry into the race and another say that she's thinking about it. Tom, I believe you wrote both of those stories, if memory serves me. Tell us all about it.
I did. So Kathy Dolter, a U.S. Army veteran and former dean of nursing at Kirkwood Community College here in Cedar Rapids, has filed paperwork to run as a Democrat, as you mentioned, to challenge Ashley Hinson for Northeast Iowa's U.S. House seat in 2026, and told me she intends to officially announce her campaign later this week. And then State Representative Lindsey James, a Democrat from Dubuque, said she is very seriously considering launching a campaign to seek her party's nomination to challenge Hinton for the congressional seat. This comes after former U.S. Attorney and Democrat Kevin Tekow suspended his campaign at the end of June, 2 months after launching his bid to try to unseat Hinton due to low fundraising, due to a lack of resources. I also had a story in today's paper, yesterday, I don't know.
And time's a flat circle.
Right. Looking at the latest fundraising numbers that were reported for the second quarter, those were due and released by the FEC earlier this week, and it looks like Kevin Tekow raised about $142,000 since he launched his campaign back in
Earlier this year.
There you go. Love it. And that compares to Hinton, who raised more than $850,000 in the second quarter and has more than $2.8 million cash on hand.
All right, Todd, this is, as Tom just alluded to, a field where we already had one Democrat enter and drop out. Should we read into this as indication that Ashley Hinson's reelection is a safe bet again next year? First and third are competitive, and the second might not be.
Well, I think she's strongly favored. I mean, I think that's a given. Although, if you ride the ye old speculation mill, which isn't at the fairgrounds, but it's still a very good mill. The rumor mill, actually, you could call it too. That Ashley Hinson's going to be senator when
Be running for a different office. Yeah.
but that's who knows. But yeah, Tekow's the smart one. He basically looked at the situation and then remembered that he was running to be in like this sort of dismal, dysfunctional U.S. House and decided not to. That's the smartest candidate. He's just avoiding the whole thing. He's just staying home. I think Lindsey James is going to run. And I noticed today that Jeff Kaufman sent out a press release referring to her as the Kamala Harris super fan. So I thought was interesting. This Catherine, is it Catherine? Yeah, Catherine Dolter she's got an interesting background. I mean, being an Army nurse and a nursing educator and all of that. I mean, she never hosted a morning show, but she still has some good stuff on her resume. But regardless, you're going to have these Democrats, regardless of who wins the nomination, you're going to have a hard time getting money. Donors are not going to give. The DCCC is not going to be involved. I don't know if the Iowa Democrats will put any money in. I don't think they're going to be cash flush.
Well, and they're going to be spending so much in the first and third.
Right, that's what I mean. That
Yeah.
those two races are going to kind of suck up all the oxygen, and in the Senate race and the governor's race. So I don't know. The second district may not gain the attention, but I mean, both of these Democrats are decent candidates. I mean, in a world where Ashley Hinson wasn't a favorite incumbent, they'd be decent members of Congress. But it's tough. I mean, the deck is so stacked against you when you take on a multi-term incumbent. You've got her fundraising that's, as you mentioned, was large, and then you've got independent groups that are ready to step in just in case there's like a poll or something that shows someone within 10 points. They'll come in and carpet bomb whoever the Democratic nominee is. So I mean, I think Hinson's going to win.
Since you broached it, Todd, let me ask you and Althea both just really quick, because we got to move on. But that you're right, Todd. That's the latest churn of the rumor mill, and that Joni Ernst may not run for re-election, and that Ashley Hinson would be appointed to that seat and then presumably run for a re-election to the Senate. Again, emphasizing that that's just the rumor mill. The DC rumor mills. What was the latest email newsletter I got today? Was it Crystal Ball that mentioned that. Yeah, Sabato's Crystal Ball mentioned it as a possibility this morning based on a couple national results. But let me just ask you very quickly and very basically each. Todd, how much stock do you put in that? Do you think Joni Ernst is going to be on the ballot next year or not?
I think she's going to run, although, with the fundraising, I didn't think she'd raised as much money as you would if you're going into a year where you're on the ballot. And also, who knows, the party out of presidential power usually does better in the off year. So, you'd think she would have actually raised more money. Her career is kind of hit the skids. I mean, she ran for conference chair, got beat. She, had the whole thing with Hegseth, which I thought she kind of got a raw deal on that because he clearly was not competent enough for the job. And then she had the we're all gonna die thing, which I don't know that that'll make a big difference regardless. But it just seems like kind of a rough patch, and maybe she's got other opportunities to pursue. And so it would not shock me if she didn't run, but I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from Republicans for her to try to run for that seat for another term because they don't want to take any chances.
Yeah, to keep the majority. Althea, what do you think?
Well, as some of you know, before I became a journalist in 2021, 2022-ish, before that, I was heavily involved with Republican campaigns and have a few friends on the Republican side, including both the campaign managers for Congresswoman Hinson and Senator Ernst. And the thing is, when I have private conversations with them and I talk about my colleagues at the Gazette, I say nice things about you guys. And so they know that I like you.
We appreciate that.
They might have some idea that you like me too, although I'm speaking for you now. So given
We
all that,
love you, Althea.
I
We
could go to
don't
the
like you. We
source.
love you. Yeah.
But the source is gonna all of a sudden smile at me
Yeah.
and not say a damn thing
Right.
because so no, as far as my conversations on background, no, they have not breached that topic. And
No.
it could be because the topic is because the notion is a rumor and only a rumor.
Right.
I guess we will have to find out. And I mean, I'm not joking. Your guess is as good as mine right now.
Well, and to be fair too, it's entirely possible, is it not, that Senator Ernst herself hasn't decided yet, right? I mean, is that not
It is
possible?
entirely possible. Keep in mind, this is 2025, so anything is possible. And already this year, we've had one bomb dropped on us, which is that Governor Reynolds decided not to run for reelection. So, I mean, just the rules of the past, the how it's happened before, that doesn't apply in 2025. So we
Yeah.
will have to stick around and find out and have plenty more to talk about on future episodes of On Iowa Politics.
Well said. Before we go, though, we got to make one last pit stop in Western Iowa's 4th district, where we have a new Republican candidate in a primary that's now getting a little bit crowded, as we kind of expected it would be in a district that's basically the Republican primary is the election. Jared, tell us who's the latest to come on board.
Yeah, we're getting close to having like one a week almost. Last time in 2020, which was not even an open primary, Steve King was just vulnerable. There were 5 people running that time. So I'll be curious to see if we get to 5 or even past that this time, now that it actually is an open primary. But yeah, we're up to 3 candidates now with the addition this week of Humboldt farmer and land appraiser Kyle Larson. He's an ISU grad and a father of 2. And he's also worked with the Farm Bureau. He represented the state of Iowa at the American Farm Bureau discussion meet. And his kind of focus on the race, he said, was going to be 3 F's: faith, family, and farm. So got some alliteration going. I personally am not an alliteration fan. My colleagues at the newspaper have heard me complain anytime we use alliterative headlines. Not a fan, whether it's in politics or elsewhere. So
I'm with your colleagues, Jared, and not just because of what you tried to get me in trouble earlier in the podcast. I'm a huge alliteration fan.
But yeah, he's quite a contrast to Siouxland Chamber President Chris McGowan and Iowa House Majority Leader Matt Winchittle, as he has never held public office, unlike Winchittle, and hasn't been in the same kind of super public-facing job like McGowan. And he's already trying to play into that in his announcement. He said that people in the 4th District deserve someone in Congress who's experienced life the way that they have. And he talked about family farms hurting and that the rural way of life is being threatened by Washington elites who think they know better. So yeah, we kind of talked about previously who can maybe try to play that sort of outsider role in a race like that, because that still is very much in vogue in especially Republican primaries, a little bit more too now in Democratic primaries maybe. But he would fit the bill best of all of any of the three so far. One of the things I was struck by, besides just the outsider stuff though, was just how far removed he is from a good chunk of the district. Humboldt is like 2+ hours away from us, and it's about 3 hours away from Council Bluffs, which are of course the two biggest cities by far in the district. And Humboldt's even about 2 hours away from Sioux County, which is the most reliably Republican county in the district. And really the only reason I say that is just practically that's going to be a lot more travel for, meeting people, getting your name out there, making yourself more familiar than the other people in the race so far are going to have to do, because they're a little closer to a good chunk of the district. So that was something I was kind of struck by too, I guess.
Man, no, that is so interesting, Jared, and it speaks to my central/eastern Iowa bias that I have as a reporter to not think about, because in the 1st and 2nd and 3rd congressional districts, you never really think about geographical challenges of covering those districts as a candidate. But the 4th, on the other hand, is literally like geographically almost a half of the state, right? And if
Marshalltown is in the 4th district. Marshalltown is 3+ hours away from Sioux City.
Yeah. So that is actually a fascinating point.
Yeah.
I grew up near Humboldt, and I didn't consider myself a Northwest Iowan. So
yeah, exactly.
So the 3 F's, he's missing the most important one, and that's fun. Why would he not have fun? I mean, that's too bad. Holidays, he could add fruitcake. I don't know. It's endless how many F's you could put at the end of your campaign brochures.
I feel like it's kind of dangerous to get into F's as a letter.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
All right, I'm cutting us off there before we actually get into actual trouble.
He could ask audiences, who gives the F? Another one for me to put on my. Oh, okay, I get it.
Oh, man.
I see where you're coming from, Sarah.
So if we don't like alliteration, does that mean that the not ideal race in Jared's mind would be Winchittle and Wolf Turnabane?
Oh my gosh.
You're going to have to be the one covering it. Winchittle versus Wolf Turnabane.
I wouldn't even have a problem with that in terms of alliteration. Just in terms of syllables, that would be my...
Right. That sounds like a radio reporter's nightmare.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode. As we go out, Bailey, our producer Bailey, I'm going to see if they can jump on as I outro here, because we have one more birthday to celebrate belatedly. Going a little farther back, I'm ashamed to admit, but happy belated birthday to the best producer in the business too, as well.
Aye.
Happy birthday.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back again. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice. We're on YouTube, where you can also smash the like button. And you can also find the podcast each and every week on your preferred Gazette or Lee newspaper website. You really have to go out of your way not to find the podcast. We bring it to you so many ways. Now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you're also subscribed to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For the entire gang, Tom Barton, Maya Marchel, Hoff, Sarah Watson, Jared McNett, Althea Cole, Todd Dorman, and our producer Bailey Sheehan, I'm Erin Murphy. Be well, everyone, and be good.